Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's time for a Word Balloon Live matinee. Good to see everybody. John Suntress here, and really happy to welcome back my guy, Paul Kupperberg. It's good to see you, Paul.
Good to see you too, John.
And Schwartzy right away gives us a nice
Hey, Schwartzy, how you doing?
warm hello. Good to see you, Schwartzy. Absolutely. Paul, congratulations. This week is the beginning of your Kickstarter campaign for, would you call it your memoirs? What would you call it,
Oh no,
Paul?
this is by no means a memoir. This is more a collection of articles and essays I've written over the years about writing and being a writer and having written and things to write and how people react to writing and stuff. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. The memoir is written, a bit more intense than that, and just looking for a publisher. But this again is more about, it's more along the lines of my illustrated guide to writing comics, more on the nonfiction end.
Okay, all right. Well, I've got your video, so let's take a look at that, and people can learn more about this great new book that Paul is kickstarting.
Hi, I'm Paul Kupperberg. One of the things I've learned as a freelance writer is that the work comes first. Whatever you're writing, you owe the reader and the characters your absolute best effort. If you can't give that, don't take the job. I've said it jokingly 100 times, and now it's the title of my new book. I never write for the money, but I always turn in the manuscript for a check. I've been lucky enough to fulfill my childhood dream by becoming a comic book writer for DC Comics, Marvel, Archie, and others. I've written my fictional heroes, often working alongside my real-life creative heroes, and getting to leave my own mark on some of the comics I write. In 45 years, I've written over 1,400 stories, including The World of Krypton, Comics' first miniseries, and Showcase number 100, DC's first Ultimate crossover event. I Killed Aquababy, then Vigilante, some of the Doom Patrol and The Thinker, and Archie. He was a big one. I Never Write for the Money is a collection of revised and updated columns originally written for Kirk Crichton's comicscareer.com and other online news sites. Now this book is part of the Comics Career Library. Subtitled Essays on Writing and Its Aftermath, I Never Write for the Money isn't just about the process of writing. It's also about the changes I've seen in publishing over the last decade and my continued place in it, as well as some looks at how the artist views his public and vice versa. I hope you'll back I Never Write for the Money, but I always turn in the manuscript for a check. I mean, remember what happened to Archie.
There we go. Pretty cool.
Wow. It's always fun to watch yourself on video.
You did a good job, man.
Thank you.
So these essays were written for websites, as you say. So
Yeah.
I mean, and now when you think about it, that could have been 20 years ago. That maybe some of the
them.
stuff is
Well, some of them are from about 10 years ago, and
Okay.
most of them were within the last decade. I wrote them for Kurt's site. I also wrote them for my own website, for Crazy 8 Press, for whatever blogs and have what have you. So it's just things that occurred to me over the years, and it's like one of them is a piece about how I was in a Barnes and Noble. Remember when you could go into a bookstore, and I was browsing and I was looking. I passed a humor section, and there were the Life with Archie trade paperbacks there. And I had just been in the graphic novel section expecting to find them there, but they're in humor. And I just, happened to attract the attention of somebody who worked there. And I asked her why Archie's there. And I said, well, she said, it's Archie. It's funny. That's in humor. I said, yeah, but this stuff isn't funny. We have all kinds of, stuff happening in the real world and cancer and this and that and the death of Miss Grundy. And she got all upset about the death of Miss Grundy. And then she found out that I killed her. So... But anyway, it's stuff like that.
That's
it's
amazing.
like, how does the world look at what we do? It's like, I was at another one as a piece. I was at an art show here in Westport, Connecticut, and I heard this artist mutter something in response to a customer's question, And it really all came down to, the punchline was, what did he say about her reaction to his art was, it's like, as long as I don't have to cash out my 401k. So the artist and his art.
Man, let's spend a minute about the death of Archie, the life with Archie, and the death with Archie. First of all, it blew my mind when I suddenly realized a couple years before. Yeah, I think a couple years before Life with Archie really began, when Tom DeFalco was there, Al Milgrom, yourself, and it's like, wow! All of a sudden, all of my favorite creators that were doing superheroes for all these years are now working at Archie and telling fun, interesting, unconventional Archie stories.
Sure. No, I mean, I went to Archie and suddenly I'm teamed up with Todd Smith, who I used to do Vigilante with, and now we're doing Archie, yin and yang, think about it. But it was just at that point, this was about 2008, 2009, they were just, open to they were trying different things. They were trying to go from the short form, the 6-8 page funny story to doing longer form stories. And a lot of their traditional Archie writers didn't do those, or, weren't, didn't normally do those. And so I think they saw the potential, if, like when the first time I sat down to write Archie, which wasn't for Life with Archie, I wrote a bunch of normal Archie stories first. And it was just the first time I sat down to write them, they were there, I knew these characters. I had a handle on them. I knew what made them tick because I had read them my whole life. I mean, literally my entire life.
Sure.
And, it was just no problem going, oh, this is what makes Archie tick. This is what Jug, It was, it gave me the opportunity to sit and think about these guys and realize that, like, Jughead was the smartest guy in town.
Never phased, never bothered by anything.
And he always has a plan. There's always a backup, it was just, it was great. And I suppose.
Did they invite you in, or how did it happen? How did the initial connection happen?
I started pitching them. I knew Victor Gorlick,
sure,
the late great Victor Gorlick,
absolutely
sweet man. I had known him for years. I had done some writing for him in 1980. I'd done some Radio Shack, TRS-80 WizKid Radio Shack comics for him around 1980.
Wow.
Yeah. And, so we'd see each other at conventions or keep in touch, whatever. And I started pitching him. He bought some stories. And then a few months later, I got a call he wanted to meet with me. So I went into New York. There was an exhibit at the Museum of Comic Art, an Archie exhibit. So we met there for the opening. And he was there with Michael Uslan, who... Again, Michael's somebody else I've known forever. He was one of the DC boys, one of the I keep wanting to say sweat hogs, but that's not right.
The Woodchucks? Was he a Woodchuck?
Woodchucks, yes, he was one of the Woodchucks, the junior Woodchucks at DC in the early 70s. And I was never a Woodchuck, but I was Woodchuck adjacent. Yeah.
And Woodchucks were fans. And in a lot of cases, then ended up becoming pros, like Marv Wolfman and Len Wein were Woodchucks.
No,
right?
these were fans who were working on staff at DC. This was Paul Levitz and Michael Uslan and Jeff Rovin and John Workman, guys like that. And in fact, a few years ago, I was at a New York Comic Con, and one by one, the Woodchucks just. We all, like, they just started gathering. We happened to be standing there, and there's come one guy, and there was Uslan, and there comes, and within 5 minutes we had a reunion going, and we walked it over to Joe Kubert's table, and surprised him, and he, because we came up behind him, and made a joke, and he turned around, and there he sees all these old men staring at him. Who were his assistants when they were kids, So it was
That's
a great.
Awesome.
It it's one of my favorite moments at a Comic-Con.
That's beautiful, man. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So Uslan, back to Archie and stuff.
Right. So yeah, because he had written the 6-issue, number 600 married life storyline in Archie, and it had been so successful they were going to continue it.
And that, by the way, I just want people to know, first Archie's walking down memory lane, and then the conceit in the story is, what would happen if I walked up memory lane?
Yeah.
So instead of reliving the past,
right.
he saw the future, and he saw both potential futures of what life would have been like had he married Betty and had he married Veronica. That was the original married life concept.
And so the idea was to turn that into an ongoing series, flesh it out, go back, start at the beginning. We weren't bound by anything Michael did.
Sure.
But the whole idea was here is a possible alternate future where Archie marries Betty, Archie marries Veronica, go. And they offered it to me. I never asked why, because when somebody's offering you, 48 it was 48 pages of comic books a month to write.
Wow.
You don't ask them why.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
and half the book was drawn by Norm Brayfogle. Am I right?
Yes.
And the other half, was it Stan Goldberg, or who was drawing it?
No. Stan didn't do this.
Was it Dan? Was it Dan?
I think Norm did the entire book.
Oh, did he do both? Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered if someone else did the other stuff.
No. Later on, other good Fred Ruiz and Fernando Ruiz and and other people came in, and then the Kennedy brothers. So there were a few people working on it.
Wow.
But, it was a lot of comic books every month, even with the Archie style, and Norm did an amazing job. I mean, there was all the dynamic, powerful Norm Brayfogle storytelling in, Stan Goldberg's Archie.
Yeah.
It was very cool.
Absolutely, man. No, and I was just delighted that, as you say, and it shouldn't be in the humor section, because you did have heavy stuff going on. We've talked about it before. Like you said, first of all, Mr. Weatherby and Ms. Grundy discover their romance and they get together, and then the tragedy of Ms. Grundy getting cancer. Yeah. Cheryl Blossom also developing cancer.
Actually, I never named Miss Grundy's illness.
Oh,
everybody assumed cancer. I have no idea. She just got ill. But anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, that and Moose kind of finding. First of all, Midge finally getting tired of the Moose bullying Jughead and everything, and also again parallel differences where in one scenario Jughead and Midge get together, in the other one Jughead and Ethel get together, which is great in both cases.
Yeah. The only thing that was the same in both stories was that Jughead wound up owning Pops.
That was amazing, too.
That was it.
That's perfect, man. All right, so he doesn't have to worry about where his hamburgers are coming from.
That's right. No matter what happens in the universe, Jughead will own Pop Tates.
Which is fantastic. Absolutely. That's the cool thing. It was amazing. And really, as someone who also grew up on Archie, it's like, look at Archie as an adult. Look at the problems he's having. And
it was real problems. That was it. We'd sit down and plot out, the 6-month arcs. And
who was involved? Who? All right. So creatively, who was plotting out the arcs?
That would have been me and Victor.
Okay.
John.
John Goldman or
John Goldwater.
Goldwater. Excuse me.
Yeah. And Alex Segura was there at the time.
Sure.
So we would all sit in the big room and just throw stuff out. And at no time did anybody ever say, no, we can't do that. That's too far. Let's kill Miss Grundy. Okay, go ahead. But do it tastefully.
Of course. Really, Victor didn't blink. I mean, Victor.
Nobody blinked.
That's the thing. Victor literally, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to really sit down and have a good conversation with Victor before he passed. But yeah, I mean, there's a guy that had been with the company since the 50s.
He had been on staff at Archie in 1950s till he died last year. I mean, he was 63, 64 years at that time.
Insane.
It was nuts. I kicked myself. One of the things I wanted to do was sit down and conduct a life review interview with Victor. And of course, you always think there's plenty of time.
I hear you, man, and truly, I felt
Yeah.
the same way. It's like, God, what a great first conversation. We
Yeah.
barely scratched the surface.
Sure.
When I spoke to him, I focused on Sugar Sugar,
Oh,
and
wow.
that great year of 1969 when
Yeah.
everything happened for Archie, and it was all over the place. And I mean, the number one song in the country,
It's
truly
a good
one of the,
song.
if not the greatest bubblegum pop song, certainly one of them, and I would
By
argue
the
it
way,
probably is.
Check the covers. Check who's covered that song. I mean, Bob Marley covered it. It's great. It's great.
That's fantastic.
A reggae Sugar Sugar. Check out the covers of Sugar Sugar. It's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, so I know what you mean, man.
Yeah.
No, it truly, your Life with Archie run was great,
Thank
and really, I was so thrilled. And when I would be in the comic shops, I'm like, if you're not reading Life with Archie, you are missing some great stuff, because again, we grew up on those 6 and 8 page stories that were always fun.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, it's like, hey, man, like this is a real soap opera that's happening to all of our favorite characters. The best was Moose finding, getting shut down by Midge, finding this new blind woman.
Right. And becoming mayor of Riverdale.
Moose is the mayor of Riverdale.
Yeah.
And Reggie becomes a reporter, and there's a whole big scandal, and he has to reveal a source, and he won't do it, and
Yeah.
he goes to jail. I mean, this was great. And also Mr. Lodge, man, what a conniver. I mean, really goes from just being that father of a girlfriend that doesn't like you to a real manipulator. I mean, classic soap opera villain.
Well, you need a J.R. Ewing. You need you need that. The big
Absolutely.
bad. And then we had the yes, Mr. Lodge was our big bad.
Well, and I'll break.
Fred Mirth. Don't forget Fred Mirth.
Fred Mirth, absolutely, yeah. The another scheming businessman, yes,
Right.
indeed. Oh no, it's honestly just the layers of all this stuff, and Archie trying to pursue his recording career,
Right.
and then in the other alternate universe, he and Betty are teaching at Riverdale High.
Right.
I mean, no, it was just really fun, and him mentoring kind of a new generation of teenagers to kind of be a new Archies, if you will, not
Sure.
as Archies, but you know what I mean.
Well, again, you need that parallel there. You need to have the, part of the spirit of Archie is the teenagers. And even though, they're grown up, they're still, you still need that in there. You need those kids in there.
That's cool. Have you been? Do you when you leave a character, can you still ever read it? I mean, how? And really, Paul, honestly, as someone that's a few years older than me and stuff, I'm interested in the people as we get older and stuff who's still reading comics and what kind of comics they're reading. So, can you read old characters that you used to work on, or is
sure.
it like an old girlfriend that I don't want to deal with it anymore?
No, because they're not buried under floorboards somewhere. The old comics. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? No.
Nice.
What
do you read?
It depends. I don't read a lot of current comics. I just kind of. It's just too much homework these days.
Okay, sure.
No,
I get it.
It's just I'm very attached to the characters. I have a weird relationship with comic books. They were very important to me. They were around me all my life. But it was kind of, I think I discovered later on in life, it was more the community that I discovered, in comic books than the comics themselves. I mean, I still love them and I read them and I'm in, most of my belongings are in storage at the moment just because of, space limitations. But I still have a whole bunch of archives and the original Supergirl stories from Action in the black and whites and things like that. So I still can go back and look at that stuff. And frankly, I'm not the audience for the new comics.
Okay.
I readily and happily admit that I have a different sensibility. I mean, I can do this stuff. I can create this stuff, no problem. But my reading preference is more, I'm a creature of what I grew up on. So I'm I'm much happier with a Julie Schwartz Batman story than
A Mike Martz, or well, that's even a couple years ago, but yeah, a Mark Doyle Batman.
I don't even know who that is.
Mark
So yes.
Mark is one of the more. I believe, unfortunately, I think he might have gotten let go during the recent DC purge, but he was in charge of the Bat Office.
Okay.
During Tom King's time, at the very least. So yeah, no, I understand that. Do you ever think about what an audience of your era? I don't, honestly, Paul, forgive me, because I don't want to insult you and call you a senior citizen in any disparaging way.
I actually just went on Medicaid, so
all right.
I'm 65.
Yeah. Okay, well, hey man, you're only 10 years older than me. I'm 55, but
it's those last 10 years are a bitch. just so you know.
I'll take your word for it. It's all right. But the thing is, you're still writing, you're still creating, not only your how-to books or even this collection of essays, but you wrote your great novel about the 50s. Right now, the title's escaping me.
You mean the same old story?
Same old story. Hold on, I'm gonna zoom in so people can see the cover better. There it is. Yes, indeed. Same old story. Absolutely.
That's right.
Look at that. You got the set all set up right there. There's all of Paul's recent efforts on that top shelf.
Just a coincidence. Actually.
Yeah. Who would have thought? That's good. Well, you see, you're smart. You dress the set before you come on. That's very good. But no,
I watch a lot of MSNBC.
Indeed, isn't it? It's true. Isn't that informative? Of again, I mean, you can tell. I mean, I don't care. I've always got my. Every now and then, you'll see to the
John
left.
Does not wear pants ever.
Well, that's only between me and my tailor, but
and your cushions.
Exactly, literally. But no, to the left of that Batman print that I have above there and stuff. Sometimes you can actually see my bathroom if I have the door open. So I don't care. Clearly, I don't care. But no, I was going to say, do you ever think about, is there a comic reading audience that are among your peers? I mean, I know from doing my videos and my audios, I'll get, listeners and viewers that are older than me, that are in, within our age group and everything. And and it's I wonder what I mean, sometimes they're still reading contemporary stuff. Sometimes, as yourself, they enjoy the reprints and they enjoy reading the old stuff. And I would say I have a combination of both. But yeah, I mean, I do think that if anything, what the last 25 years has proven is the kind of comics we grew up on, that just scratches the surface again. And you can really tell interesting, cool stories. And I think creators that are younger than us are doing it, and I also think some of your peers are doing it too.
Absolutely, I think I don't think age has anything to do with it. No. Certainly, there have been creators who were who were operating at their peak. I mean, Jesus, I mentioned before Joe Kubert. I don't care how old. If Joe lived to be 150, he would be better at 150 than he was at 75.
Agreed.
No question. Will Eisner, another guy.
Yes.
Alex Toth. They never lost a step at all. They just went, they were always at their peak and they just stayed there. And I know for a fact, that I'm a better writer now than I ever was, because every time you do it, you learn something. And I've actually made an effort to learn stuff. Part of the reasons I don't read as many comics is that I read a lot of other stuff as well, that, I'm catching up or revisiting. I was an English lit major in college, and that pretentiousness never leaves you. So I want to go back and reread my Graham Greene and my Jack London and my, my Philip Roth and all that stuff. Great, brilliant writers. I mean, Jesus, Jack London. Everybody thinks of him as just the
Call of the
Wild and the Alaska stories, but he wrote over 100 books on fiction, nonfiction. He was a political thinker. He wrote two novels that one is Martin Eden, and the other is John Barleycorn, and they're both essentially the same book. They're about his battles with alcoholism, but they're astonishing pieces of work that were written in 1910.
He was a sports writer too.
He was a sports writer, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you to adjust your microphone because you're rubbing up against your thing, and I'm hearing the scraping. Put it closer to your face there, my man.
There you go.
I know.
All right.
There you go. Better. All right.
Okay.
Excellent. Very good.
Um,
Yeah. So okay, because I mean, yeah. Do you ever think about, any? Because you've written some creator-owned stuff, and I mean,
sure.
you had your recent Charlton romances and
Right.
things of that like and everything. But yeah, I mean, are there other stories that you might want to do in a comic book format?
There are a few, yeah. I mean, conventional superhero stuff and all that. It's like, yeah, okay, I've done that.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah. There are a couple of graphic novels I'd like to work on. One of them, unfortunately, is dependent on a real person who's actually works in the Department of Justice. And these days, I want to stay away from there.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, Jesus, I hear you, man.
But
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are a few things. I doubt that they'll ever happen. I mean, as much as I would like to say I'm still a happy, productive member of the comic book, community, I don't know that anybody at DC even knows my name anymore, except for the reprint guys, and he just got let go. So
No, I understand that too. Yeah. Well, like I said, man, we were talking before we started broadcasting. I told you that 50 Years of Superman writers panel we put together for Mainframe was a big hit, and I kind of knew it would be, Paul, because yourself, Elliot, Jerry, and Dan all have great stories of your eras when you were, in the office and everything, or submitting your stuff to the office.
Right.
And I knew you guys would have great stories. And again, based on our own conversations and stuff, always good stories. I'm going to ask, right now, Comic Boom and a couple others have asked some questions, and I want to throw them out there. First of all, Comic Boom says he loved your work on the Superboy series back in the 80s, which I completely agree. Who was your artist on Superboy back then?
It was largely Kurt Schaffenberger, but there was also some stuff by the very talented and lovely Alex Saviuk.
I'm a big fan of both of theirs, and Alex is a good friend as well.
Good.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
And then we've talked about this before. You worked on one of Jack Kirby's last works, Superpowers. Did you work with Kirby on anything else, and what was the experience like?
Well, I never worked with Kirby on anything. I met him, in passing a couple of times at conventions over the years. And anytime you try to say anything to Jack, like, "Boy, you're great. I love your stuff," he'll go, "Nah, you kids, you're the ones who would do." He would never let you compliment him. But frankly, I had no idea that Jack Kirby would be drawing that Superpowers miniseries when I wrote the script.
Wow.
I got the gig. Write a script, turn it in. Next thing I know, it's Kirby.
Wow.
Had I known it was going to be Kirby, I would have written it differently. I would have opened it up a lot more, given him more space to do the full pages and the double page splashes. But still, it was his last, regular ongoing work in comics.
That's amazing. Really?
Yeah. No, it was. It doesn't get much better than sharing a credit box with Jack Kirby.
I bet, man. Were there others like we mentioned Kubert, who wrote Andrew, obviously, and by the way, I'm totally with you. Kubert's literally his last stuff when DC was doing that Joe Kubert Presents, the last years of his life. It was just so exciting, and all of his own creator-owned books like Yusuf and the Sarajevo book and things like that.
Yeah.
I thought were all just amazing. And it's like, wow, he still has it. And truly, now you mentioned Alex Saviuk. I know he worked with Eisner on one of Eisner's last things. That short little crossover that Eisner and Michael Chabon did, where the spirit met the escapist.
Right.
And I know Alex, kind of helped finish that off and everything, and then had it looking like a classic Eisner piece and everything. So
I did a lot of stuff with Alex in the early days at DC. It was always great stuff.
He was amazing. Well, Ed asks on the Archie topic, can you talk a bit about the Scribe Award winning and GLAAD nominated young adult prose novel on Kevin Keller, how it came about, and any future tie-in prose project plans?
Oh well, I got a call from Victor at Archie, and he said, "Hey, we're doing a young adult Kevin novel for Grasset Dunlop. You interested?" he knew I had written young adult stuff before, and so he just threw me the assignment, and it was wonderful. It was a lot of fun. I love writing prose. I mean, in a perfect world, I would have grown up and been a novelist and probably never written comic books. So yeah, I still, that's what I prefer to do. And so yeah, it was fun, and it was very great. And you can't do, a kind of goofy, adventure-ish kind of thing with a character like Kevin.
Sure.
The way he was being treated in life with Archie, and in his own book, we had to deal with the topic at hand, which is gay kid. And I set this when he was about in middle school, and he's just coming into an awareness of himself, and who he is, and so it was very gratifying to be nominated for the GLAAD Award. That's great. It's obviously I did my job. So
that was the great thing, I think, about that regime of Archie that still is running now, with John running the company and everything, because for a while Archie got a little too conservative, for my taste personally. And it just seemed like when John took over the company, it was like, hey, Archie's for everybody, and creating Kevin was a great example of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And I also loved, and I don't know if you wrote the story, but another version of Life with Archie, where it was a future story, had him hooking up with Val from Josie and the Pussycats, and them having a kid, which I thought was, and again, I'm like, that's great. Because again, it's like, no, man, Archie was the universal teenage experience. Why would you cut anybody out? Exactly. It was great when they brought, is it Chuck that...
Chuck and Nancy.
Chuck and Nancy, yeah.
Right.
And of course, Chuck was the cartoonist of the group.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of fun. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. It's like, no, Archie should be for everybody.
It absolutely is. It's, and it's been, well, look, we lived in a predominantly white world, and so Archie was all white.
Sure.
Comics were all white. I mean, geez,
Of course they were.
I love these days, everybody pulls out these 1950s public service announcements from DC. Respect all color, respect people. Don't you? It's like, I don't see anybody in Metropolis who's like, oh, that's all right.
You ain't wrong. You're not wrong, man.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a much better world.
Absolutely.
I'm putting together another book that I'm going to be doing with Kirk in the near future. It's a book of interviews that I conducted around 1990. I used to write the DC Direct Currents newsletter, and every month we would do an interview with one of the creators tied to the project that month. So I found about 20 of the raw interviews, the unedited interviews. So I'm pulling those together for a book.
When you say raw interviews, are they tapes? Are they?
Yeah, well, I had taped them and then I transcribed them.
So are you hanging on? Did you hang on to the transcriptions, or did you hang on to
I have the transcriptions of about 20.
Okay, so you don't have I think I've asked you this before. You don't have the audio tapes or anything.
No, I don't have the audio.
Tapes. I understand, dude. Believe me.
Yeah.
I spent 15 years in sports radio.
Yeah.
And I have next to nothing as far as any of the old air checks. Yeah. So believe me, I understand. But yeah, it's like, I've since learned in the last 15 years doing the podcast, like, no, hang on to everything, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. But and I forget my original point about bringing these up. What was the question?
Well, again, what you were saying, we were talking about Archie, and then the diversity, and I guess, or whatever, in terms of, mentioning DC.
Right.
Go on.
So I had these. I pull these 20 interviews together, and I'm editing them and going through them, and then I get around to writing about the introduction, and I realize it's like there are 22 interviews in the book, and there's only one woman creator represented in the whole. Yeah.
Well,
it's not because I was leaving them out. If you go through the 90 plus issues of DC Direct Currents at the time, I doubt if you'd be able to find interviews with 5 women, because they just weren't in the business.
I kind of want to guess, was it either Barbara Kiesel or Louise Simonson?
Oddly enough, no.
Who?
It was Linda Medley for her Prince Valiant.
Wow.
No, it wasn't Linda. It was Trina. That's right.
Oh, Trina Robbins, sure.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it's sadly when you could only count on one hand
Yeah.
significant comic creators of the moment. Yeah, Trina, you're right. Trina absolutely would have been.
And the
one
only
of them.
African American in the group was Kyle Baker.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Jeez. Well, I'm glad things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very different, a much better place now that everybody's voice is being heard.
Agreed. And here, how about this? Jessica joins us, and good to see you, Jessica. Archie is timeless. I work with refugees in the year 2020, and I often use classic Archie to practice reading in English to them, so many of the kids pick up the newer stuff.
Excellent.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense.
It is.
So,
Learning how to read from comics is so. I learned to read with the help of comics, and I was the only kid in the third grade who not only knew what invulnerable meant, but I could spell it.
Hey, honestly, Paul, my parents gave me comic strips and comic books to read, and I was always reading 2 grades ahead of myself up until 4th grade. Mm-hmm. And it was really like because they just did it when I was a little kid, and I loved it. And I have a feeling that's why I still love comic books to this day, is they were always just part of my reading mix.
Sure.
So I totally get it, absolutely. And then Comic Boom also says, you have extensive experience as a former editor at DC Comics between 1991 and 2006. What do you think of the current state of the industry, and DC in particular? What would you do if you were editor-in-chief at DC?
It's so hard to say about what you do because I don't have access to, I can I can give you the fanboy answer. I can tell you what I would love to see, but realistically, what is needed, I don't know. I don't know the market that well. I've been off staff, for 16 years now, 14 years. I keep up with the industry, but man, I don't know. People go, how does this work in comics? I don't know how it works in comics today.
What's the fanboy answer then?
Well, the fanboy answer would be to get back to basics and bring back Superman and Batman and make them accessible and make them not so grim and bring some some hope to comics and give a wider diversity of comics. Just more kid stuff. You want. I know there's this effort, and maybe it's more sincere now than it was, but there's really not a lot of good kid stuff coming from the major. DC did some or does some. Marvel, I don't think did much, if any.
They farm it out to IDW.
Okay.
And I mean, so they, it is happening. People like Katie Cook, she's writing kid versions of Marvel heroes and stuff.
Okay.
But it's for IDW. It's not directly for Marvel.
And again, I think the idea of real kids comics versus the idea of what comic book companies think kids comics should be. They probably want to do miniature versions of what they're doing in the big boy comics. I don't know that that's the way to go. I think kids have different needs and different. Right now I'm in an interesting position. My girlfriend's daughter lives in the same building we do, and she has a 2.5-year-old daughter. So I'm seeing this little kid, since she's born, and now she's 2.5. And then I went through it with my own son, but that was 20 years ago. So I'm watching kids, and their priorities are different. And what they're interested in is different. They're not attracted to the same flashy things we are. They want different flashy things. And frankly, I think there's just an attention span problem in the world in general. I'm not saying these darn kids,
No.
Me too. I mean, this has become my memory. I don't have to remember anymore. I can just look it up.
All the phone numbers. Absolutely. You're absolutely right about that.
Not even phone numbers. I'm talking about facts and information
true.
about anything. Who was in that movie? I don't have to remember.
That's true.
IMDb.
That's so funny. Hillary Barta, I'll get, we love old movies. We talk all the time. Yeah. And every now he's finally calmed down. But one of us would whip out a smartphone and be like, "No, don't do that. We got to think of this. Let's not lose our memories." And it's like, Hill, it's fine. It's okay.
Happening. Yeah.
Well, but and you're right about that. Attention spans are getting shorter universally.
Universally, and you can see it in all kinds of media. When I introduced my son at, I don't know, 13, 14, when he had an attention span, and I started introducing him to black and white movies, old movies, and he would turn to me and it's like, wow, they take their time. They're telling you what's going on. They're giving you a chance to, to follow along. They're not just, and then of course, you got into the 70s movies and, where there was like, no matter what movie it was, women's tops came off, in the 70s.
Yeah.
And we were watching one movie. It was Silent Partner. You're familiar with that?
Oh, of course. I love that. Elliot Gould, yes.
Great movie.
Curtis Hanson, the director, and a great crime caper movie.
Yeah.
Like you said, Susanna York and Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And there is at some point the young lady is nude.
Yes.
And he says, "Ooh, boobies." And I said, "Yeah, well, back then there was," and he goes, "No, they should keep putting boobies in movies. More of us would go see them."
That's hilarious. That's fantastic. I just talked to Jim McBride, who is Mr. Skin of the infamous Mr. Skin internet site, and he just made a documentary about the history of nudity in film.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it's fantastic. It's very tastefully done, and it's comprehensive. It goes literally back to Edison's silent era to modern day, to 50 Shades of Grey.
And I don't think nudity has to be tasteful. So that's just me. But,
you'll enjoy the movie. It's really terrific. No, I get what you're saying. By the way, Silent Partner, great movie. Good Lord, great movie.
Oh, if you haven't seen it, find
great
it
crime movie, tremendous.
Yeah. Set in Toronto.
Curtis Hanson, and now I'm blanking on some of his other movies, but he's a tremendous 80s and 90s and 70s director. He was great.
Yeah.
So, too much, man. You're killing me. That was great. That's fantastic. Well, and my observation, and I want to know what you think of this, is because you're right in terms of it's easy from a fan armchair standpoint to say they ought to do X, DC and Marvel.
Right.
DC, especially with the recent moves and stuff like that, I even think that people in the top positions at DC, they're still finding out what AT&T wants from them.
I wouldn't doubt that. DC. I started at DC when it was almost still a mom and pop store. It was they were at 75 Rock. We had half of the 6th floor, I think 6th floor, or the 9th floor, and there were like 35 people working in the office. That was it, and you could walk in. The receptionist knew your face. Walk in, you go hang out. There was the couch, there was the coffee room, and you knew everybody. By the time I was on staff in the 90s and the early 2000s, there were 350 people on 5 floors, and there were people I worked with on a weekly basis. I didn't know their names because there were just too many names to remember. And then it moved to the whole. Paul's, leaving, that transition was just a seismic shift. I mean, he was Paul was an old school proprietor of this place. He was all about the comic books first, and making those happen. And the new regime, obviously, they were looking, as soon as he was out the door, they were in California. So I have no idea what's going on up there now. Again, I don't even know very many people who are left working there.
Sure. No, agreed. And it's, really, things are, at an interesting point. Did you watch any of DC Fandom? Were you aware of it? That online event they had? Actually, they're doing it again tomorrow.
They're doing part 2 tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. It's my understanding. It's all about the movies and the media and stuff. And if they were doing something about the comic books, I'd watch that just for the the unique attention paid to comic books.
It's my understanding that tomorrow is going to be the comics focused portion, because talking to people like Franco Aureliani from Art and Franco and Tiny Titans, I know he did a quick sketch thing that didn't run on the first round, so it's running tomorrow. Bendis and Gene Lewin Yang interviewed Jurgens, so there's going to be a little Superman roundtable between the three of them. So I know definitely those are two very comic-centric things that are going to be part of tomorrow's presentation.
I hope so.
Yeah. I it's interesting. And again, I think Fandom came at the right time, given all the bad news that preceded it a couple weeks before.
Yeah.
And also, the other thing that I would say, Paul, is, I would say that I think DC and Marvel kind of squandered the last 20 years in still doing things the same way. Whether it's the monthly magazine format, as you say, a lack of attention to or finding the right formula to attract younger readers. I do think specifically DC is doing the right things now. They have all these great YA graphic novels that are coming out, and they are going to unconventional artists to draw them, and not the typical writers to write them. And I think they're succeeding. I read a couple of them. I thought the Catwoman one they did last year was great. I think the Nightwing one they did this year was a really smart story. And they're not in continuity.
No. In fact, I read one of Barry Liger's Flash novels. And, totally he's got his own continuity. They let him just run with his own continuity. And it was fun. It was, I'd have a ball writing that kind of stuff. That's great. It's just that, the business is just it's never going back.
Right.
And I'm just not sure where it's going. But hey, again, I don't think they know either. I mean, like you said about the last 20 years, all that constant, that almost yearly revision of things. It was
reboots.
Just like, how
big events,
why it's exhausting.
It was. Agreed.
You need, Crisis was in retrospect a horrible idea.
Why do you say so? Talk about that.
Because
for a second.
it led to just making things even more complicated. I understood Crisis on, I understood the multiverse back in 1985 perfectly. I don't understand this. What is it? 52 now, and this.
It was 52, and actually, right now, the event is called Death Metal that Scott Snyder's doing, and it does kind of. It's the multiverse on cocaine, and I mean that in a very positive way in terms of it's insane, and it really is like, wow, there's a lot of shit going on.
Having had experience with cocaine, it's not quite the fun ride you think it is. But because you know what Robin Williams said about cocaine, it makes you feel like a new man, and then he wants some too. I think it's. I'm sure it's entertaining, and I'm sure it's it's a rocket ride.
It is a rocket ride, yes.
But it's short term.
But Scott even knows it is. It is.
But everything has come across as being like, you're just going to throw this out and see if it sticks. And after a while, it's like, well, and I think the numbers show. I posted some numbers from the 1980s. I found on old royalty statements the other day on my website, and it's like 186,000 for a middle book, because I didn't write bestsellers. I was a B guy. I wrote B books.
I'm with you.
And my B book was selling 186,000 copies.
And it'd be the top selling book of the year right now.
And here I remember a friend of mine who a few years ago had a book coming from IDW, I think it was, and they called him all excited about the numbers for the first issue. 9,000. And he was like horrified because here's a guy who had sold 200,000 in the past, and now 9,000 is like cool.
But also, and I agree with you, it is a far cry from what it used to be. But also, a creator-owned book that Cells 9000 can do quite well for the creative team, and I kind of like that makes those books possible.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is a positive as far as all that goes. But yeah, I agree. No, I agree with you. Well, and it was interesting too because, as you say, from event to event, consequences of those events kind of become meaningless, and death when a DC or Marvel character dies now, there really is this cynicism from the readers of, well, sure, he's dead now, and about 2 years from now they'll bring him back and reboot him in some way, and that will be implausible. Well, when you killed characters, as we discussed as we showed in your Kickstarter video, they stayed dead.
Yeah, Vigilante Adrian Chase. Nobody ever brought him back.
Well, they did. Actually, they did about 10 years ago.
But that was like he was dead. He was brought back dead. So nobody ever brought Adrian Chase back to life.
Yep.
I am very gratified for that because I think I wrote the definitive, final, oh no, I'm a piece of shit, I don't deserve to live, put a bullet in my head story.
From that moment that he crossed the line to ultimately him killing himself, was it a year? I mean, how many issues did you write?
It was about a year. I think.
Wow.
I think he shot at the cop in number 36 or 37, and we went till number 50.
Till number 50, yeah. Wow. Honestly, Paul, and truly, every now and then, someone will bring up like the insignificance of a hero death or whatever, and certainly Vigilante was an anti-hero, and certainly but and I always point to your run, and then it's like, there's no way in hell that DC or Marvel would write that kind of book with that kind of ending. And again, even you guys back then, so the end happens, and then you write this 3-page text piece at the end of the book, kind of, explaining, hey, we know it's harsh stuff. Yeah. And really kind of giving you reasons why you felt the story had to end this way. And I think in a very careful and mature way of not glorifying suicide, but really pointing out the dangers and horrors of this choice.
Both the editor and I had, the editor more so than I, but had been involved in, suicide hotline, runaway hotlines, working with that. So, we were certainly sensitive to the issue. And, I don't, by that point, I wasn't taking anything I did in a comic book story for granted. I had reached a point where, when you're writing, for Superman, certainly Superman back in the 80s, it was fluff. The Julie Schwartz, that end of the Schwartz run, it was largely fluff. Julie was kind of like, retirement's coming up. I'm coasting along. Fine. If anybody deserved it, But, when you start doing a title like Vigilante, when you start putting guns into real life situations, you'll notice there's a decided dearth of costumes on other characters in that book, because when you introduce costume characters, you eliminate a level of reality, I think, because if you look it up, nobody in the history of the world has ever put on a costume and gone out to fight crime at night. Ever.
Yeah, well, there's those bizarre kind of real
Bernie
heroes.
Getz.
Bernie Getz certainly, but
that doesn't count.
Yeah, but like there were a couple real life guys kind of running around streets, and that didn't last very long.
Yeah.
But you might remember about 15 years ago or so.
There was a guy. There was a guy. I think he was running around as Batman, wasn't he?
There were that actually did put on recognizable costumes, but there even were like a handful that kind of tried, and it's like, it's not.
Yeah, but the fact that we know about them.
Well, and they certainly didn't last. I mean, that's the thing. If they are still out there, I don't think it's
it
or the Guardian Angels, of course. Sliwa and those guys.
Yeah, and being a New Yorker, I knew from the Guardian Angels, and frankly, they were more of a problem than the problem they were supposed to fight. But,
I understand. No, crazy stuff, man. I wanted to ask regarding the period when you were writing Vigilante, because you came from Superboy and Supergirl and Legion, where the stories were a little softer, and a little more typical and stuff. But you were you were part of that era of grim and gritty, but you weren't the cause of it, but you worked in that milieu because that's kind of the direction of where comics were going. So yeah, tell me about that as a writer. Did you accept it? Obviously you did, because you went to Vigilante and
Sure.
had such an important run.
Well,
But yeah,
Vigilante,
was it a weird adjustment? Obviously, as you say, you had to make sure that it was as realistic as it could be.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a relief to write big boy stories. You know, you have to accept this whole bunch of fallacies when you're writing superhero stories. Certainly when you're doing a character like Superman. Superman and the Flash are the two prime examples. Every Superman and Flash story should be over by page 2, panel 3. Page 1, you introduce the problem. Page 2, panel 1, there's a whoosh of air goes through, and page 2, panel 2, is everybody in jail, and Superman and the Flash are standing there going, schmucks. You know, but you know, you watch the Flash show, which is just, you know, mind-explodingly stupid at times.
Hilarious. Go on.
Flash is going after a guy. The guy distracts Flash for 5 seconds. Flash takes care of the distraction, turns around. Where did he go? How fast can you move in 5 seconds? How far can you go? He's the freaking Flash.
Fantastic.
I was watching Stargirl. I started watching Stargirl. I saw an episode, and I'm going, all right, this is all right. Yeah, stupid dialogue. You know, that can't be helped in comic book shows. Obviously, you have to have stupid dialogue.
You're killing me. Go on.
But at some point, she's fighting whoever she's fighting, and then other stuff is going on. And so at some point, she goes, I don't have any time for this. And with one punch, takes out the person she's been fighting for the last 5 minutes. What?
I'm with
Why
you.
didn't you do that in the first place?
Yeah, I
and
get
go
it.
help your friends. I mean, there's this ridiculous. There are these fallacies built into these booby traps that are built into these stories. That just, you know, I reach them and I stop and I gotta go. All right, just, you know, pretend it makes sense and go through. You know.
You are killing me. That's fantastic. Because truly, I'm like, hey, Stargirl's really good, but then you just you point out a very good flaw, and it's like, yeah, I guess
but
that's
it's
true.
universal in these things. They have they have to delay the characters, you know,
Right.
because, you know, you're showing 3 people, you know, 3 different situations at once. But, you know, maybe the audience is intelligent enough to understand that these things are happening simultaneously. But, you know,
You're killing me. That's fantastic.
I could do an hour on these idiots.
I'm aware. So, are there any? Do you have Amazon Prime? Have you watched things like The Boys or some of the other, or Umbrella Academy on Netflix? Some of the grittier. Okay.
No, I just find myself unable to work up a care.
Okay.
You know, I've been.
Yeah. What are you watching, man?
Well, right now we're watching Shameless. We're on season 4 of Shameless.
Fantastic. That's great, man.
But
you know, my most non comic booky show that I am totally addicted to is The Crown on Netflix about Queen
Crown is
Elizabeth.
great, yeah. Well, I like the first 2.
You know, but I have to say, and I've always liked Olivia Colman, who has since taken over the role. Yeah. I got it, man. I wanted to wait and watch the 3rd season closer to when the 4th is going to drop, because I really didn't want to break.
Yeah.
And felt that I could put a pause after Claire Foy, I believe, was the original actor that played Elizabeth, and Matt Smith, who was a tremendous Prince Philip.
Oh, absolutely.
And especially in contrast to his Doctor Who role and everything. Yeah. But I'm halfway
and my
through.
girlfriend is British, so I have just so much fun. That's not the way.
But I love that show.
Her father was a chaplain in the army.
Wow.
Major general. He was actually the chaplain of the Queen's Guard.
Wow.
So he was essentially the Queen's chaplain. And when so she had to go to all these, like, you know, teas and stuff at the palace, and it was like, wow, that's cool. And she goes, oh, it was such a pain in the neck, you know, you have to dress up and you have to curtsy and everything, you know. And Margaret wasn't like that, you know.
That's fantastic. Wow. Yeah. By the way, Helena Bonham Carter is fantastic as Prince Margaret. If that is, that's who's playing Prince Margaret. Oh my God. No, I absolutely, and it's an interesting contrast to when she was playing George the Sixth wife, the Queen Mother.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day in King's Speech.
That's
so
right.
it's no, I honestly it's well cast, and that guy who writes The Crown also wrote that great Helen Mirren film, The Queen.
Oh,
and I just think he's it's I'm a Downton Abbey fan as well. I won't deny that. I'm an Anglophile at the end of the day.
I would if England wasn't as screwed up as here, I'd move there. Like she wants to get a cottage on the Welsh shore. I think that would be nice.
Wow, that'd be great.
Perhaps
God, where I'd want to move is Port Marion, where they shot the prisoner.
Oh, Port Marion, yes. There's also
Doc
Martin.
Doc Martin, I love that show.
Win or something like that.
Yeah, those little Channel Island communities are fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. If only they got internet service.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Exactly, man. I don't know. It's a little too remote. I don't know if I'd like that. As far as that, I need a city, Paul. You're in New York. I'm in Chicago.
Well, I'm in Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. So
but I've been in Chicago. I lived there for a while.
I always forget that. Yeah, man. That's awesome. Where were you in Chicago?
I was on the north side. I was right by a couple of blocks off of Howard Street.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I lived in Evanston, right by Howard, for a good number of years. And currently, I'm like 3 miles from Wrigley Field.
Oh,
I'm right by Lane Tech High School.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like walking distance from me.
Yeah, I used to go to the Cubby Hole.
Sure, absolutely, man. Hilarious.
Never got into Kaminsky
Wrigley Field.
I never got in there.
Oh, that's too bad, man. No, it's a beautiful park. Absolutely, man. So, well, hey, man, if you gotta go, we've been chatting an hour. Otherwise, I was just gonna bug you about what else you're watching and any other programs that you might be watching that you're enjoying.
Well, frankly, it's hard to remember. Like we watch. Sometimes we'll sit down to watch it, and you go, "What the hell were we watching?" So things. Better Call Saul, though. Better Call Saul, better than Breaking Bad.
Agreed.
I just better written, better, just more intense. Just an incredible show.
Well, and then now I'm blanking on his name, the actor who plays Saul, the comedian.
Oh, yes, him.
Mr. Show. I know him, that guy.
Yes.
Well, and truly between Saul and also I loved him in The Paper.
Yes.
He's such a great actor, and I'm sure someone in the chat will jog our memory, before we're done.
Yeah.
But oh God, it's so great. And David Cross is his partner. Of course, I remember David. But that guy is a Chicago guy. He's a West Suburbs guy. Saul, the guy who plays Saul and everything. And I loved him in Larry Sanders back in the day too, as Larry's agent.
That's right.
He's a great actor. No, I'm a comedy nerd. I'm a superhero nerd, and also just a broadcast nerd, being a guy that worked in radio for most of my life.
Yeah, to me, it's the beginning of September will always be to me new television season. Bob Odenkirk. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you very much, Kirk. I appreciate that. Absolutely. And Mark also. Yes. Thanks, guys. Good. I'm glad you guys are watching and helping us out. Thank you very much. That's great.
It was the fall preview guide of TV Guide. So this was I missed that. It was school started, the new car models were unveiled, and the fall preview TV Guide beginning of September.
Absolutely, and new Saturday morning cartoons as well.
New Saturday morning cartoons.
Now, actually, I was going to say because they Saturday morning cartoons started around 1964.
Yeah.
So you were like a 10-year-old kid or whatever.
I was 10 years old. Sure.
Sure. Okay. Because I was born in 1964. Go on.
And before that, we had there were a lot of the old Farmer Gray, Terry Toons were syndicated in New York. Literally, it was the Farm Report at like 6 o'clock in the morning in Brooklyn, New York. We had no farm. Nothing grows in Brooklyn. A tree grows in Brooklyn? Bullshit. Nothing grows in Brooklyn. And then there would be the Farmer Brown, the Farmer Gray commercial cartoon.
Television show, yeah.
Yeah, and it would
was Farmer Gray, he was a live action host?
No. It was the cartoon.
It was cartoons of Farmer Gray. I don't know these cartoons.
Terry Toons started pre-World War I.
I didn't realize they went that far back, because
Yeah.
I know Heckle and Jekyll and Mighty Mouse were Terry Toons, and
But
Deputy Dog.
their first big hit was this Farmer Gray.
Interesting.
And it was silent cartoons. So they had this, the wacky quacky soundtrack, and it was beautiful because you could sit there and make up your own dialogue with the cartoons. So there was always Saturday morning cartoons, but it wasn't tied in with Too Sweet Sugar serials until 64. And then in 69 or so, the Federal Trade Commission came out and said you can't advertise.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I think it happened more in the 70s, but what I loved was, and maybe I'm wrong, but I love looking on YouTube, because I remember when these things were still airing.
Yeah.
For Captain Crunch, it was the Rocky and Bullwinkle animators and voice actors too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they were like 90-second commercials. So they were like little plays. Not only hawking the cereal, but you got to know the captain and his crew and all the kids.
And on Looney Tunes, you'd have you'd watching the Looney Tunes cartoons, and then the commercial would come on, and there was Bugs hawking Kellogg's cornflakes or whatever. So that's what they finally came down on, was tying in the cartoons and the characters and all that to addict kids to sugar because they need help. But no, it's very interesting. Actually, I once read and reviewed a book about the history of cereal in America, breakfast cereal, and the whole sweet thing, that wasn't a thing until the 60s. That really was, an introduction slowly in the 50s. Before that, cereal was kind of bland and, cornflakes without the sugar.
And digestive, like a digestive, like kind of aid.
Yeah, granola kind of thing. Yeah.
I remember, I want to say A&E, when it's so funny. A&E, of course, used to stand for Arts and Entertainment, and they would literally show operas, as you well know, back in the day. It ain't that like that anymore. And also, AMC is the same way with American Movie Classics. But I remember when Biography used to run, and they had a biography of the Kellogg brothers that created the company. And it is really interesting when you go back to the 1800s when they started, and the reasons for making, and Post as well.
Yeah.
The reasons to make cereal were very different than the sugar-laden stuff that we grew up on and stuff.
So it's, the Wellville kind of story. So,
What was all right, now, much like your favorite cartoons, what was your sugary cereal that you liked?
Oh, man, I must admit Captain Crunch was a weakness. I remember when it was introduced, because that was, 63, 64?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember when it would hit the market. And also, we had a beautiful thing back then. I can't believe we're talking about cereal here.
Well, why not?
you could get a 12-pack of the little individual boxes.
Yes.
Which, by the way, you could cut. There were little perforations, and you could open them up and slit the wax paper inside, and pour your milk directly into the box.
Yep, that was a big treat. I remember that as well, man.
So and my mother would buy the 12-pack, so you could pick. You could have Fruit Loops and Corn Flakes and Captain
Raisin Bran.
Raisin Bran. Well, who ate Raisin Bran? Come on.
You know what's weird? I was a huge Wheaties kid, and I maybe and again, maybe being a baseball fan or whatever back in the day, but I really liked the taste of Wheaties, and I admit it. I'd still sugar the hell out of it, but as a kid, but I remember I was a big Wheaties fan. So that my total sugar cereal, and I just love the title of it still to this day, is Kaboom, with the clown.
I remember Kaboom.
Yeah, with the clown on the box.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I like this. Good tangent, Paul. I like where we're going with this. All right, so once again, the Kickstarter is for, and give the title of your book of essays.
It is called I Never Write for the Money, but I Always Turn in the Manuscript for a Check. And it's currently running on Kickstarter. You can just go up there and check it out. We are, we last I checked before this started, we were about 120% funded. So
congratulations.
Excellent. We're working on... by the way, just for going to the Kickstarter and for clicking on a button and sharing the information about our Kickstarter on your Facebook page, you can download a free 60-page e-comic with 8 stories of mine for nothing. And that's just our way of saying thank you for checking it out. No purchase necessary.
That's awesome, man. Go on.
And we're working on our first on stretch goals now. So hopefully, big things to come.
Indeed, and you had a great Kickstarter just a couple months ago. Your How to Write Comics
yes, for
book. Hold on,
Kupperberg's Illustrated Guide to Writing Comics available. Indeed. There you go.
There it is. Yes, indeed.
Available on Amazon.com, or you can get signed, personalized copies directly from me at Morttodd, MORTTODD.com/cupbook, KUPPBOOK.html, and you can go straight there and pay me through PayPal, and I will send you a signed and personalized copy.
That's outstanding, man. Honestly, I'm so glad that everything's working in terms of that and your Kickstarters, and then also I always have to point out once again the Same Old Story, the great novel, exactly, that is really fantastic. I can't if you're a fan of comic history, you will absolutely appreciate this great look at the 1950s.
It's a murder mystery set in the comic book industry of about 1952 during a slump in the business, and it's got many characters who are a pastiche of real characters, but it's got the real Julie Schwartz, who I just threw in as a cameo guest star because I love the man, and he wound up being a character in the book. It's and Robert Kanigher was the model for my murder victim, because everybody wanted to kill Bob.
Can you give us a good Kanigher story, that an encounter or whatever before we wrap up?
I like Bob a lot.
Did you? Okay.
Oh yeah, no, he was a total pretentious twat. He walked, he wore turtleneck sweaters and patches on the elbow and smoked a pipe.
I'm a writer.
I'm a writer, and he was a close talker, and he had this nasally voice. He kind of sounded like this, almost Truman Capote-ish, but not
interesting. Okay.
And he would tell you these fabulous stories about himself. He had a scar, and he told me it was his dueling scar that he got in
Heidelberg.
In Heidelberg or whatever. It's like, and I think in the book I read, and it turns out he just, got hit in the face with a car antenna when he was a kid, but he would do that. It was just fascinating to listen to. He so believed his own bullshit as he was telling it to you. You just had to be fascinated. And plus, as insane as his stuff could get, Jesus, he was a great writer.
Story machine.
This is the guy who one Friday they said to him, "Oh crap, we got nothing for showcase," and Bob came back Monday with the script for the first Metal Men story.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, and if you look at that, that's a fully fleshed out group of characters, brilliantly delineated in that one silly little story. But, in a week, he probably could have done it on his lunch hour if he had,
Wow. No, I know. And then all those great, the war stories, certainly.
And stuff was,
Sergeant Rock with Joe and everything. And just the weird stuff of, all right, so there's a skeleton that's burst into flames and driving a car. And that's your splash page.
Yeah.
And we find out how we got there. And it's like, okay, sounds, that's intriguing. I mean, he really knew how to suck you in to an 8-page story.
And Julie Schwartz, who had shared an office with him back in the 40s and 50s when Bob was on staff as an editor, said he was like, at his lunch hour, he'd pull out a typewriter and he'd just write a story. He'd make money on his lunch hour, which was cool, but he would act it out as he was writing it. So he would, jump up on the desk and wave the umbrella like the sword and stuff, So just a great character.
That's fantastic, man. Hilarious.
I was lucky to get to meet guys like him and some of the other old timers. Of course, now I am the old timer that you kids are lucky to meet. By God.
Hey, don't kid yourself, Paul. Seriously, I am so glad that you share these stories, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the way things were, and
the way things are.
and the way things are, and we need people with perspective to tell us, no, this is how it really happened or whatever. And mentioning Julie, I know, and we mentioned it on the Superman panel. You're a pack rat. You don't throw things out. Thank God you don't. And we always get great examples of this on your blog at paulkupperberg.com, right?
Right.
And you found this great videotape. Describe it.
I had this videotape. When Julie was packing up his office in the '90s after he retired, I would visit him, and he'd be sitting going through drawers, and I would sit there. There would be the waste paper basket between him and me, and as he was dropping stuff in, I'd be pulling it out and going, "No, Julie, you can't throw this away." A lot of stuff I retrieved, I gave to DC's library. He had this ledger book from the '50s. Each page, it was about that big, each page was 1 month. So January 1951, and there were miniature versions of every cover, photographs of every cover for that month, pasted onto the page, and underneath was all the sales data.
Wow.
And
Wow.
Julie just had to sit in his file cabinet, and he was going to toss it. I kept it in my office for years. Idiot, I never copied it. I never, and before I left staff, I turned it and a whole bunch of other stuff into the library because, as much as I wanted to steal it, that should really remain at DC.
Absolutely, man.
So one of the things I pulled out, he was throwing away a videotape. I said, "What's this?" And he went, "Oh, something I did at a convention." So I took it home, with a bunch of other stuff. I also, I retrieved records of well, anyway. So this thing is sitting in a box since 1994, 6, whatever. And a few months ago, with all my stuff in storage, I was sorting through things and I pulled this out. And it's like, well, what the hell is this? So I put out a call online and somebody volunteered to transfer it from video to digital. And it turns out to be an hour-long slideshow talk that Julie gave at the 1987 Charlotte Con, just the history of Superman. So it was Julie talking, and there were 2 cameras, so there's one on Julie and one on the slide presentation. And so he's showing these slides of, the Siegel and Schuster and his story, the science fiction writers he knew and all that stuff.
Yes.
So it is just this whole history of Superman.
Wow.
Because a lot of the great science fiction writers touched Superman at some point, in fact, I named, when I was writing for Julie a Superman, I came up, we wanted a new villain, a new character. So we came up, he said, let's do one called Captain Future after my old friend Edmund Hamilton.
Yes.
And
fine Superman writer. Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. And so, we did this. We came up with this Captain Future. We came up with a gimmick and a whole bit. And just before I was leaving to go home and write the script, he was, you know what? Ed deserves a promotion. Let's make him Colonel Future. So
that's outstanding.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But anyway, so that tape exists.
Yeah.
It's been transferred to digital. I have it, and with my friend Michael Urey at Back Issue Magazine, we're going to host a video watch party at some point in the very near future. So everybody will get a chance to see this, and after that, I will make sure it's up on YouTube and the like, so that it is not lost to history.
Thank God, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I've been in contact with the original videographer, and he thinks there were maybe 4 copies of this thing made.
Wow.
So
honestly, man, it's stuff like that, or even 3 minutes on a local newscast. Sure. Where they're talking to a creator, and just some of the great things that have popped up, thank God, on YouTube. There's that amazing late 70s thing that was made for Canadian television where they go to the offices of DC and Marvel, and I am 90% certain it's Jonathan Winters narrating it, but it's a look at DC. It sure as hell sounds like him.
Wow, I have to check. Send me the link.
I'll send you the link of it. Some and I'll say it. Some jerk put it online and claims that he owns it and put a time code on the one that's on YouTube.
Yeah.
I have a private one because I got it. My friend had a 16 millimeter version of it. They used to go to schools, as I'm sure to art classes of, hey, you could be a cartoonist and work at a place like DC and Marvel.
Right.
But they even have the old the 800 number or the 900 number. Those that they used to be able to call for DC.
Oh, for the news, yeah, sure. I was involved in that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome because the one they have, it's oh damn it, the old Joe Orlando is narrating it, and you won't want to miss the new issue of Jonah Hex, and we've got a brand new character called Black Lightning that you're gonna love. Oh, it's fantastic,
Yeah,
and there's on the DC side, Jack Harris is literally looking over Trevor Von Eden's shoulder. And they're going over the splash page for the first Black Lightning. And talking to Neil and Denny O'Neil before Denny passed, there's a story session that they recreated for the film, and it's them going over Superman versus Ali, and it's great. Oh my god!
Yeah.
And Steranko's in there, and it's when his Chandler graphic novel had come out, and Archie Goodwin and Stan Lee are sitting and discussing the Human Fly character and showing designs on that. Oh, it's so good.
Right at the top for that appearance, huh?
So yeah, you'll love it. And again, yeah, thank God people are finding these and putting them online because again, it's that period before the 90s that is so spotty in its documentation. Yeah. And I'm glad that you found this great 80s, thing that Julie did and everything because no, it's like that stuff is. We need the straight story because a lot of times
well, I don't know that you always got the exact straight story from Julie. As he once said to me, he was telling me the story of the creation of the new Flash, in the
Barry Allen, yeah,
the Barry Allen Flash, and he goes, so we were at an editorial meeting, and someone suggested that we bring back the Flash, and he goes, and since nobody remembers who it was, let's just say it was me.
And Kanigher can lay claim to that because I know he was.
But I'm saying Julie's telling
I
the story was
sure. Right? Why not? Why not me? Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it is interesting that they don't really know. Really, there were and Fantino was in the room. Kanigher was in the room, as I understand it.
I don't think Carmen. No, I don't.
No?
I don't think Carmen. No, this was an editorial meeting.
Because I'm trying to remember
Bob may have been in there if he was on staff. I think he was still editorial, so he would have been in the meeting.
Who drew that first? Who drew?
Carmine.
Carmine did draw the first.
Carmine
story.
penciled it, and Joe Kubert inked it.
There you go. Wow.
But the reason Julie went to Kanigher to write the first issue was because they needed it quick, and Bob was at the next desk. They shared the office, so
yeah.
So he had it because after that was the only Flash Bob ever did for,
Wow.
After that, it was all John Broome.
John Broome, sure,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So
fascinating, man.
Yeah.
No, again, no, I love this stuff. Well, dude, honestly, keep it up, and let's hope you find a home for that memoir because I know you got all these great stories.
If I don't find a home, I will make my own. So
attaboy. Good. No, it's truly, and I mean, really, have the Kickstarters been working? Are you pleased with how they're doing?
I mean, Kickstarter it's a weird situation. It's like it's kind of become a distribution network, which I don't think is what it was intended to be. But it does, at least it enables you to get the book off the ground. I know there are Kickstarters that have made a fortune.
Oh, sure.
But mostly you just kind of break even and maybe make a few extra bucks, because once you're done with postage and extras and stretch goals, it all gets to be a bit much. But still, it gives you the capital to get the book published because putting together a book and printing it, it's not wildly expensive these days, but it can cost you $1,000.
I'm hip. No. I understand. Well, I hope that the profit margin continues to expand for you. And
do I?
Yes, indeed, absolutely. Well, yeah, no, honestly, because I think again, with all the weird changes that are coming and we're in the midst of, because of the current status quo, God only knows what that. I mean, I don't think it's the end of comics as some naysayers believe. It's like relax. It's not going away, but it is changing.
Well, I will end with this little wisdom from my dear old friend Paul Levitz, who again, we met when we were 12, 13 years old in middle school, and been friends ever since. He was on another podcast, and Scott Edelman's podcast, Eating the Fantastic, and he was talking. Scott brought up the fact that back in the early '70s, everybody was talking about how comics were dying. Howard Chaykin and Walt Simonson and Alan Weiss, they all used to sit around going, "We're going to do this for a few years, and then comics will be dead, and we'll go become illustrators somewhere else." And Scott said, "Well, obviously comics didn't die." And Paul said, "Well, I will argue that they've had like 3 separate deaths, and that we've just managed to come back from them." But the newsstand, the traditional newsstand model that was for the first 40 years of
Yes.
comic history,
Yes.
that died. Comics on the newsstand died,
Right.
and then came the first generation of the
Direct
the direct market, and that eventually died and
Yes.
turned into the new. So. And now we're in our 4th death, we're there's or our 4th rebirth. I think
I hear you,
the
man.
whole digital revolution. I think there will always be floppies. I think I hate
Interesting.
that term. I will not use
Interesting.
that
Okay.
because comics are a collectible.
Interesting.
Yet collectors want something to put in a bag and put on the shelf. So even if the print run is 5,000, there will always, I think, be print comic books.
That's interesting.
And
Well, maybe like
graphic novels.
vinyl. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
like vinyl with music. Go on.
Well, but vinyl, I just read this morning, CDs are sold $100 million less than they sold last year, and vinyl is up another $20 million over last year. So
Yep.
we're selling twice the dollar volume of CDs. So
Right.
yeah,
who's to say? No, you're
who's
right.
to say? So
No, I like it.
We don't know. We don't know what the future is going to bring. We don't know what the distribution models are going to be. And frankly, it's just like look at Star Trek. They never predicted the personal computer. Everything was mainframe. You don't know. The best guess is always going to fall short.
I hear you, man.
So there.
I like it. That's excellent. As always, Paul, great conversation.
Thank you.
Stay well,
fun.
and
You too.
hey, the next big thing you got going, please let me know, and happy to have a new conversation.
I will keep in touch.
Indeed, you do that. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Paul Kupperberg, thank you, and letting everybody know that later tonight we're going to do a trivia contest. Fred Van Lente will be back. We're going to start that at 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central, and that's 6 o'clock Pacific time. So that'll be a lot of fun. We're all on the same team. It's just like a bar thing. And Fred is a great trivia master. He also has a new graphic novel about the history of basketball that we'll be talking about. So that's Word Balloon Live later tonight. I hope you'll join me for that. Until then, as I